Hi, it's Mike, WB4HUC, and when I made my previous video, it occurred to me that I needed to go one step further and sort of explain how to set up the software to talk to the Omni 7 when you're running the Omni 7 from the front panel and not through the N4PY Pegasus Plus software. I didn't think about that while I was making the video, but as soon as I posted it, it hit me that the job was kind of only half done. So here's the other half of that. So now you have the radio set up for digital modes running the radio from the front panel. So what about the software? Well, probably the easiest way that I know of is to use OmniRig. I don't really like OmniRig, but because again, the Pegasus Plus software to me does a better job of communicating with other software and other hardware than OmniRig does. But OmniRig works, and it's out there and it's free, so why not use it? So now that we have the radio configured, let's configure WSJTX. So I'm going to drag his icon down here. And one thing I found out, I'm using 64-bit Windows 10. And one thing I found out is I need to, when I'm using OmniRig, I need to run the software that uses OmniRig in administrator mode. Now, I think that's actually documented somewhere. That's how I found it. But anyway, run as administrator. So I'm going to start WSJTX. And so you can see he's connected to the radio now because we have the correct frequency, the correct band. And if we monitor, we can see the sound card is selected. So just quickly we'll go into the settings. So for the radio, it's OmniRig Rig 2, and there's no serial port. Baud rate is 57600. We're using Vox for push to talk. USB is the mode. This is not like, say, the ICOM IC7300 where you can, I believe, set the radio up for digital USB. So it's just USB. And then if you want split operation, select rig. And then you can say test cat. And that comes back green. So we know that WSJTX is communicating with the Omni 7 through OmniRig. And then audio, this is actually my Signal Link USB. I just gave it the name, Ten-Tec Omni 7 digital sound card. So we're all set up and ready to go. And as you can see, we're decoding signals over here. And what you can't see is the front panel of the radio shows that WSJTX has put the radio in split mode, and we transmit on VFOB, receive on VFOA. So there's other software you can use if you want to. For instance, right now I don't need to run SDR Uno for the pan adapter, but because I'm on a fixed frequency, and you can see he's very busy. But just for purposes of illustration, I guess I'll say, let's go ahead and start SDR Uno. And it's the same thing. We need to right click and say run as administrator. And then we can play. But one thing we need to do is make sure that SDR Uno is set to use OmniRig. So let's go to settings over here and OmniRig, and we can see that Rig 2 is the Omni 7 and he's online. And then we go over here to the receiver window and do cat control. This is set up to use a virtual serial port through the N4PY software, but if you go, and you can leave that enabled or not enabled, if you go over here, then you can make your selections for OmniRig, and I select these two and then the fourth one. And then to make it work, you go down here and click rsync 2. So assign Omni Rig control to this virtual receiver. So now you can't see it, but if I change this, you can see it changed over here. And if I was displaying the front panel of the radio, you would see that it changed on the front panel of the radio. So everything is communicating. So we'll put this back, and we'll put that back, and the radio also went back to 14074. And we set our sound card. This isn't anything to do with the radio communication, but we set our sound card up, and you can see we're receiving signals. Now that does it for the pan adapter, which we don't really need, but again, for purposes of illustration, I decided to throw it in here. But one thing you might need, if you have it, sorry, I'm going to rearrange these a little bit. There we go. So I don't even need this. I'm just going to, and then we'll make this work here. So there's a lot of CW activity. I think the CQ Worldwide DX contest for CW is on today. And our PSK signals, or I'm sorry, our FT8 signals are over here. So if we want to, we can just turn that off. And so that sets up our pan adapter. That sets up our, we can even get rid of this. So now we, one other thing I do, and again, it's nothing to do with Omni Rig or the Omni 7 in particular, because this has its own serial port. But my LP100A watt meter also has a small software window that we can use, and then my logging program. And this one, again, run as administrator. And what we need to do is go in, and there is a frequency display window, kind of a dumbed down rig control window. So if we go into tools, and if we go into setup, and if we go into miscellaneous ham setup, then we'll see radio interface. Normally I run the Tentec Jupiter and Pegasus interface, Jupiter and Pegasus disk file interface. But since that's for the N4PY software, but since we're not using the N4PY software, we've disabled this. We'll go over here and we'll choose Omni Rig 2. So we will uncheck disable. Seems backwards, but we'll uncheck disable, and we'll say OK. And now you can see here, this window shows the frequency. And again, if I turn the VFO knob, you can see that this one is changed, this one is changed, and if you can see the red marker has moved, and if I was still showing the frequency display, you'd see that it has also changed. So let's just go back to where we were. So now everything's back to where it was. So now when signals get logged from here, they'll go into here if I turn on one more little piece of software. So if I turn this software, and I don't have to, it doesn't talk through serial ports, it doesn't talk to Omni Rig, so I can just start this guy up. And it can run either with the Omni 7 or the 7300. We're going to run from the Omni 7. So this is a little piece of software that lets me copy log entries from the WSJTX log into the logic log. It's just a little piece of intermediate software that allows this program to talk to this program. Well, they don't actually talk together. They read and write files. I'm not going to go into a big explanation, but anyway, this software is necessary for me to get data from the WSJTX log into my normal logging program, which is Logic version 10. So let's just try, now that we've done all of this, let's try to make a contact. So here's one. We'll try him. Now over here we're putting out 4 watts. Well, we don't really want to do that. Let's run the power up. And so on the Omni VII, that's the thing I failed to mention in the previous video, is set your power output to 100 watts on the Omni VII. Use the TX control on your signal link to actually control the output. So we've dropped out of transmit mode because apparently someone else has replied to this guy. So we'll look for another one. The ones in green are stations I've already contacted. The ones in turquoise are ones that I have not contacted, and if they're red, then they're the ones that are either calling me or I'm calling them. So let's try him. And we're about 50 watts out according to our meter here. I generally run about 50 watts. My antenna is not the best, so I tend to give better signal reports than I get, so I just bump the power up a little bit to compensate for maybe a lesser signal than the other station has. There we go. So he's telling me I'm plenty strong, and he's plenty strong. So we'll just let this contact play out here. And you can see in the waterfall, we're transmit and receive. And we are working split mode. The radio is in split mode. We're transmitting on VFOB, receiving on VFOA. Okay, so the contact is done. He has sent his 73. I have sent my 73. I'm using the Omni VII, 50 watts, and here's the information. So as soon as I click OK, it's going to record this into the WSJTX log. You're going to see it recorded here, and then after this entry is made, you're going to see it go up here, and it'll be copied into the logic logging software, which would not happen if this software were not running. So I'm going to click OK. Here we are here. And it took a minute, but there he is here. And the nice thing about Logic is that he'll go out to qrz.com and look up the call sign and copy this information in here. And then this information comes from the log entry from WSJTX. So there you have it. The radio is set up according to the first video. The software is set up using OmniRig, as I've described in this video that you're watching, and that's it. So it's not difficult. You might have to play with things until you get it right, but this is mostly, well, this is how I do it. And this video has gone on a little bit longer than I had thought, but we covered quite a bit in here. So using OmniRig, pointing to COM port 3, which is the Omni VII's COM port, allows you to share that COM port with these pieces of software here so that everybody can talk to the radio all at the same time. And you can't do that unless you have some method of sharing the COM port for the radio, or unless you're using something like the N4PY Pegasus Plus software, which lets you set up virtual serial ports to talk to each different piece of software. And that's normally how I do it. So the WSJTX software would be on one virtual port. The logic program would be on a different serial port. SDR Uno would be on a third virtual serial port. And I said earlier that I didn't like Omni I don't dislike it, but to me, I like the virtual serial port method using the N4PY software better, because there's a bit of a lag here using Omni directly, and it's not a problem, but you can't see it. But if I start tuning the knob, the SDR Uno display and the frequency displays here and over here do not keep up with how fast I'm turning the knob. So it's not a big problem, but it's something to get used to if you're operating phone or CW and you're tuning around. You know, you tend to get ahead of the pan adapter because it's lagging a bit behind. That's really the only issue that I have with it. Otherwise, it works fine, does its job, and as you can see here, everything's working like it should. Anyway, that's it for this video. Like I said, I had just realized that the first video was only half of the issue. The other half was how do you make the software talk to the radio, and this method shows you do it with Omni and it works fine. And I don't remember if I did this. I think I did, but if I double click on Omni he set up his Rig 2, Ten-Tec Omni 7, COM 3, 57600, 8 data bits, parity is none, stop bits is 2, probably could be 1. RTS and DTR are high, and then the pole interval is half a second, and then the timeout is 3 seconds. And you can play with these values, but this is how it's set up for me. And then the only other thing, again, was when you start the other software that uses Omni start it, run as administrator. Go up here and pick run as administrator, and that should get you going. And if anybody's wondering what this is over here, Wayne Green used to put girly pictures on the covers of 73 magazine. This is from November 1972. I, of course, was interested in the technical articles. I was 16 years old, and I was not interested in the bikini girl. I was only interested in the technical articles. So there you go. And too bad it's not April 1st. But anyway, that's it for this video. So thank you for watching.